So I'm Douglas County Commissioner Mary Ann Borgeson, and I co-chair the 501c3 that is managing the Justice Project along with Commissioner PJ Morgan. And we welcome all of you here tonight. And just to set the stage, what will happen is we'll hear from John Christensen, who is also a member of the 501c3. And then we'll turn it to the chair of our county board, Chris Rogers, who is chairing the programs and services part of the project. And then we'll go to Bruce Carpenter, who is from HDR, and he'll talk about the design of the project. And then Don Molman will talk some of the budget items. And then Bruce is here to add, or Joel's here to add any comments. And then we'll open it up for comments from the public at that time. So again, thank you all for being here. We're excited to share the details of the plan with you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Christensen.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's not raining, not snowing, so this is a good evening. I want to thank all of you for being here. One of the great things about UNO is that there's obviously been a history of incredible advancement in strong academic experiences as well as research. But one of the things that has happened in the recent past is the advancement in serving kids and community. And it's something that I care about deeply, and it seems to me that a lot of tonight's discussion and things that have gone on are related to how best can we advance the future for kids and community. The one thing I do want to say is we have so many people here, and I want everyone to have the opportunity to ask a question or make a quick comment. But I'm going to ask you, at least until everyone's done speaking, to hold that within a couple of minutes, if you will, so that everyone can put out on the floor what's something that they're thinking about at this point in time. And with that, I'm ready to turn it over, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you, John. I want to direct you, well, first, let me thank you again for coming out. I want to acknowledge the fellow members of the county board. I want to ask them to raise their hands so you know who they are. Ask them to raise their hands so you see Commissioner Mike Boyle, Claire Dewey, and Jim Kavanaugh, the other members of the county board here. Also, from this screen, let's focus here on this screen because I want to start here and give you some background context before you get to the building. The center of the screen here, center over there, you see the center dialogue, the center folded in the middle of this. The center that you'll see, the design that you'll see, that represents that building. But around this is the programs, because there's been a lot of conversation about the building, the physical piece of the building, but this building means nothing without the other programming piece around it. Let's start here with this piece to your right in the corner here that says policy and statutes. It says LB 1112. I'm going to start there and give context from there. LB 1112 is a statute that was passed last year. LB 1112 basically says that a youth that is in the detention center cannot be detained there because they don't have a placement to go to. Now, this is a distinction. In adult corrections, placement could be considered like when you go to jail, you're there, you serve your time. Okay, you can do that as an adult. As a juvenile, at the county level, we are set up to be rehabilitated. So if you are sitting in the detention center at the county, unless you did a heinous crime and you're waiting to have your adjudication and go East Omaha, you're sitting in Douglas County waiting to be placed somewhere. Again, let me reiterate, this law says that a kid that's sitting in a detention center can no longer be held there because of lack of placement. A placement would be, for instance, a kid comes there, they need some type of behavioral health service, they're waiting to go to that behavioral health service. A kid is waiting for a shelter bed to open up, something of that sort. That's what a placement is. 1112 is a culmination of 12 years of work that the county board and the state legislature has done to try to reform our juvenile justice system. In 2007, we had an issue where our facility that has a capacity of 144 beds was maxed out to somewhere around 210 to 220 on average. We had that much overcrowding in the facility. At that time, the board took it upon itself to try to do a study and do a serious look at how do we bring our detention down in Douglas County. From that study, we began a process to become what's known as the JDAI site. That's a Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative site. It's a process started by the Annie Casey Foundation that's been in place, and all over the country it has helped counties across the country reduce their juvenile populations. It's based on about 8 principles, but one of the main pieces of it is finding alternatives to detention for children so they do not sit in facilities. Research shows that a kid that sits in a detention facility when they really don't need to be there has a chance of coming out worse than they were when they came in. Over that period of time, as a JDI site, we talked to experts, best practices around the country, and one of those best practices that we saw in 2012 was a one-stop facility that was in Multnomah County, Oregon. That is Portland. From that place, that's when we first had this vision of trying to come to a one-stop shop. For years, we talked about how do we make it happen with the political will come together. We looked at a couple of sites along the way, but eventually, you know, things didn't turn around until recently here where we had the opportunity to talk to some other players, and the willpower and finance and everything kind of came together to put us in the position to make this come true. Also, another thing that influenced us in this respect was the fact that about 2 years ago, for years, we have a juvenile bench on the 6th floor of the courthouse. They have 5 juvenile court judges. For years, there had been a movement to try to get additional judges. For reasons in the legislature, that could not happen until the legislature approved us getting a 6th judge. There were conversations about us possibly getting a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th judge. Conversations that the board had with the legislature off record kind of said, give us some time to get our facilities together. We cannot house 6, 7, or 8 judges there. Right now, and they would attest to it, it is a cramped environment there with the 6. And we probably should have been doing this at times past, but we weren't in the right position to get there. So from the time I've been on the board, there's been a space issue. And so this opportunity to get to the facility you're going to have, it now had 2 things. One, it alleviates a space need for us, but also it gives us that continued momentum to fulfill the goal that we set out was to reform the juvenile justice system in Douglas County. So with a need for space, and in addition to that need for space, you might have heard conversations about the possibility of us getting an additional district court judge. The space is not there in the facility. We need the space to happen, and that space is part of the continual programming that we've been trying to put in place to help reform that system. So with that said, we've been trying to do a couple of things since LB 1112 started as far as our continual process. You see over in the corner here, we've been working on some programs here for about the last year with the help of state probation with us as our partner, which really they have the lead role in that, and they've been working to help us get there to try to put some programs in place so when 1112 hits on July 1, we're ready to be there. Now, programs are developed here by probation, because probation by law controls the flow in and out of our detention center. Probation has worked with a couple of entities to address a couple of needs. One, they work with Utah Holly Girls Center. That's the correct name for it, Utah Holly Girls Center? Academy. Utah Holly Academy. To increase the capacity for our shelter beds to take a higher risk of girls that don't need to be in the detention center. That's one program that's kind of been working on. Another program that's been worked on in partnership with UNMC, Charles Drew Health Center, Creighton University, is we're beginning a process to try to speed up the time that individuals sit in our detention center waiting on evals for behavioral health needs, and also trying to put them outside of the facility to have their meds, their med management, and also behavioral health needs there. That program the board approved last week, and they're in the process of starting that up. We've also worked with, trying to work with another entity here that we can't say at the time because those details haven't been worked out, to handle additional capacity for boys to have shelter care to some degree. And lastly, we're working with Child Savings Institute on a program to try to really pilot and find a better way to handle misdemeanors so they don't have to go through the facility, and try to facilitate some type of triage or stabilization so they can get to services. All this is done in addition to some meetings that we've been having on a higher level to talk with people in the system about what may be possible, what things need to change within, what things we need to be prepared for. I can announce now in conversation that also in addition to these programmings, you might have heard that we've been in partnership with the Sherwood Foundation to help us finance this effort. Sherwood has committed $10 million, $5 million toward the building that we're going to build, but also $5 million toward the program. They've generously talked with us about an additional lead contribution to possibly an 18-bed facility to try to address the next level of mental health care that we need here to be able to reduce the footprint of kids that are sitting in that center with behavioral health needs. So with that said, I lay that out as the context because the building is a part of the program and trying to help us continually reform our system. We need that building for space because we're running out of space. But one of the main principles that this building brings to fruition is the co-location piece of what we want to have all of our services in one building to be more family friendly and to make sure that we can serve the kids and family in one location and reduce the effects that it has on families that run all around the county to try to find services and try to make sure they're in a better atmosphere to be served. So with that as the tone, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce and those guys to show you the building. After that, we'll answer whatever questions you have on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Bruce Carpenter. I'm an architect with HDR, and we've been working with the commissioners, and as Chris stated, very well, working on programs to help primarily the kids that are currently in the youth center or in the juvenile justice system, to reduce those numbers and find alternatives because of the research that shows the performance of the kids that are in alternative areas outside the youth center. When we began to look at the design, as Chris stated, the primary need that was identified was additional courts. If you've been in the Hall of Justice in the juvenile court area, you know that the space need is immediate, and there's been additional judges that have been approved by the state. So we began a space assessment, space analysis of not only the courts, but the county attorney, the public defender's office, probation, and the youth center, and looking at also the community services that support the juvenile justice system and providing space for those as well. So that was the primary guiding principle. The second was to improve to really transform the juvenile justice system. And the first point that was brought to us, and what we've seen in other locations and work that we've been involved with, is having all the services co-located. And in simple terms, it comes down to really communication. So if you have the attorneys and the judges and the community services, what's lacking right now are the kids, and the kids need to interact with all of those other departments or individuals. So having the kids and the attorneys and the public defenders, the judges and the community services, that's what makes this be a transformed system. It allows more instant communication. If there needs to be interaction at some point during the day, you'll see in the design that's an easy move, and it gives the opportunity to be a much more efficient process and system. And the last guiding principle is this is a civic building, and there should be civic pride around the structure and the overall site development. So those are guiding principles, and we use those as touch points and decision points as we go through the process. So we did look at sites early in the process. I would say a year ago. Probably more than a year ago, we began looking at sites in the area, and if you use these guiding principles, and primarily the transformative design and having all of the services co-located, and the need for the attorneys to access the Hall of Justice and the other services in that area, the two sites presented themselves as being able to accomplish that. One site is the MUD site that we're looking at now. We had studied that a year ago, and MUD was looking at keeping their offices there, and we weren't able to come to an agreement on that, so we looked at what we call a library site, which is just adjacent on 18th Street. And while we were looking at that, the MUD site came back to the table with the idea that they would move their staff, and that the existing MUD building would become available as part of the project. So that's moved forward, and the site acquisition on that has been approved at all levels, and the bond is being processed on that. So the site acquisition now has moved forward. The project scope, these are approximate square footages. What we're calling the Justice Center is the entire complex that has the components of what the judicial tower where the courts are, and supporting elements to the court with the community programs and attorneys. And we're fitting up 6 courtrooms with the opportunity to fit up 2 additional ones as those judges are assigned. The MUD facility is 4 stories, approximately 40,000 square feet. We're looking at that for probation and community programs, but we're continuing to develop the design. What we have presenting now is a notional design that fits the space analysis that we did. There may be a move that puts public defenders in the MUD building and probation in the tower. So we'll be working through those finalization of the location for the departments. And then the youth center is 4 stories, 60,000 square feet. We had 48 beds planned, plus 16 shell beds. At this point, we're including the cost to build all of the 64 beds in the initial scope of the project. And then the skywalk connection back to the Hall of Justice. So I know some in the audience have seen this, and I don't want to be repetitive, but I'm assuming some in the audience haven't seen it. So I do want to cover kind of the basic design at this point. We have developed a lot of documentation. The book on the end of the table is a compilation of the space analysis and meetings with the departments. It also has some research that we've done regarding transformative design for juvenile justice and some other locations, and we'll touch on those as well. So what's on the screen is the block between Harney and Howard, 17th and 18th, which is the MUD site currently. And we're showing, utilizing the entire square block with the tower on the right side of the site. North is to the top towards the Hall of Justice. So the judicial tower is on the east side, the existing MUD on the left, on the west side, and then the youth center on the south side on Howard Street. And a nice public courtyard in between all of those facilities. And then the blue line is the connector back to the Hall of Justice. So these are the scope elements that we just discussed in the previous slide. And then we do stacking and blocking at this point, meaning we take the blocks of the square footage and lay them out and plan and then stack them, and what's the potential for stacking. So this diagram is a slice through the building that shows the youth center on the left side with the street level, all of the offices and lobby, and then 2 housing levels, outdoor recreation, gymnasium, and outdoor recreation space. And then a slice through the tower with parking below grade. You can see on the right-hand side on Harney, the street is 1 level above Howard on the left side of the screen. So there's a change in grade. So for the tower, the community and entrance lobby is level 2 on this diagram, and then 2 levels of courts and attorney community space on the street level. This is a representational image of the courtyard. So a nice public space. There's a connector in the back that we're showing some opportunity for maybe artwork that would connect the MUD building with the tower so people can move undercover. And it also creates a point of interest for the courtyard. The MUD building's on the right side of this image and the new tower on the left. As far as architectural design, just the point of that, this is a building for kids and family. So it's a civic building, but we're speaking to the kids. And so it's a little bit different than a courthouse that is for adults. We want to make sure that we're speaking to and representing the kids and the family that are going to be using the facility. So you can see the Skylink from the tower to the Hall of Justice on the left side in the MUD building, and then looking up on the left side of this image is the OPPD building. That's about the same height, about nine stories, that would match the new tower. And then this is from the corner of 18th and Howard, looking at the youth center, and we're looking at this as being represented as urban residential. There's no need for the barbed wire, the Constantine wire that you see on the existing youth center. The building is secure. It's a relatively quiet building with offices on the street level. You see the glass, the entrance, and activity on the street level. And then a little bit of color that comes out, that would be the connector back to the tower between the MUD building, kind of in the center of the block. And this material would be brick. It's about the same scale as the Flatiron building across the street, 4 stories. You see the white is the gymnasium or multi-purpose room, and then next to that is the outdoor space that the parapet goes up to conceal that. This is a simple diagram. We explain it more, but really what helps with the co-location is to have this internal connection so the kids can move simply between the housing units and the youth center to the courts in the tower. And we have a little bit of detail. These are, again, representational. Some of this work was laid out in the earlier design plan. So you see the youth center is staffed at a ratio of 1:8, so there are 8-room modules, and the current youth center is 12-room modules, but being used because of PREA requirements, they're the staffing is 1:8. So this is a typical floor with shared core area in the center, and then the blue line shows path to the courts. That's a secure path, and there's 4. Well, this is the grade level, so this is primarily community space for the community services, and the entrance to the lobby, the main lobby off the plaza, and then on the MUD building, the main entrance off the plaza as it exists today, and the street level of the MUD building is all community service, and then the connector between the two. This shows the courts, 4 courtrooms, and as we said, we're fitting out 6 with 2 shelved for future to have 8 courts. The lobby is on the west side that faces the public courtyard, and then the judges' chambers on the east side behind the court. So you have a separation that's required. And there's several elevators. The kids come up, a secure elevator, the judges come up, and the public come up, all distinct elevators. As Chris mentioned, this is a restorative model. It's not a punitive model. These kids have not been adjudicated, and it shouldn't be punishment when they're in the youth center. So we're trying to design these with respect, with trauma-informed design elements. So you see daylight, the rooms on the right side of this image, and the outdoor space, and the daylight on views to the exterior on the left, the common area in the center. And this is a typical module. So these are 8-room, and then the individual room has daylight and to the exterior that's controllable. But what we look at in a trauma-informed environment, we're trying to reduce stress. The quality of lighting is important. These are some things that maybe weren't considered 3 decades ago. You know, you're looking at the quality of light. You're looking at the acoustical quality in the room, because sound really has a presence when you're a young child or a teenager, and what's happening. The audible is something that's memorable. So we try to make that calming, quiet. You still need hard surfaces that are durable, so these are some of the challenges. But a little bit of color and trying to make it more human. And I think this is something that we work very hard at in the design process, and it will continue through all of the detailing. It's somewhat similar to patient areas. They're also in a trauma, potentially in a trauma state, so you want to do everything you can to kind of calm that and make it more comfortable. So I think the perception that this is a jail or cell block is a misconception, and what we're really trying to achieve here is a restorative environment. And it's important, because the more you tell someone that they're a criminal, the more they begin to believe it. And at a younger age, that is harder to overcome for those kids. And the movement, there's been a lot of discussion on how they're transported, and it's a pretty high point of trauma. The research is showing that's one of the higher points of trauma, so we're able to reduce that. And if the the more we can help them get to be a productive citizen in the community, I think the better we all are in that scenario. And then this is the outdoor space, try to include some natural elements, nature. I mean, this isn't as healing as going into a forest, but having nature, there's something to that speaks to everyone, including the kids. So this is something that we want to make sure we carry through the design. But maybe it's always a challenge. We've done it before with healing gardens, and I think we can do it here. So I'll end with just two representative projects that we've looked at, and just kind of spot the detention center photo. But this is the new stadium. The red dot that has the Park Avenue address is a co-located detention. This kind of triangular building is actually the module for the kids. It's right across from a public park and $1 billion of investment. And the people that are in Minneapolis probably don't know that it's a juvenile center, even if they've been to this area. You see the mixed-use towers surrounding it. So the other thing is, of course, therapeutic model. Their population is twice as large as Douglas County. Hennepin is essentially Minneapolis. They have 88 beds available, average population 45, and length of stay 7. So these are the things. I'm not going to say they're goals, but the idea is to find alternatives for these kids and get them in more productive environments. And then Ramsey, which is St. Paul, also kind of working together in the state and the county. So in this case, you can see again the red dot, the Ramsey County Juvenile Justice. Directly across the street is the new Children's Museum. If you listen to Remember Prairie Home Companion, it was Fitzgerald Theater, which is about a block away. A lot of development, again, on this site. And these both have been here for probably close to 3 decades. So the development has occurred around the site. So those have been, we also looked at King County. We had King County as Seattle. They're in the process of building a consolidated co-located services as well, and similar to us having a youth center that has some age. They're taking that down and building it new, even though it's right across the lot. So that research is in the appendix. That's a public document. It's pretty large, so having access, well, we can find a way to get access to those points. But again, Ramsey's pretty close in demographics, 538, very close to Douglas County, therapeutic, 44 licensed beds with average daily population 24. And they're continuing to drive those numbers down and continuing to work to improve the situation for the kids in their community. So it's a good representative model. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Don to just review the project cost and where we're at. So one thing I do want to mention, anytime we get into design, I'm sorry, we're not looking just to put people in the spaces, to match square footage with the number of people. We're looking at we have an ambition to make it a bigger project. And I think all of the things that are happening that Chris mentioned with programs, all that discussion is a result of this project being conceived and the need and all of that energy around the project. And that's what we like to be in the middle of that. As architects, it's about more than just the facility. We're providing a facility that can help transform, but the idea is an ambition to make an impact in the community. So that's really what we're driving at here.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Molman. I'm working with Burlington Capital on this project. Burlington Capital is actually serving a function as a project manager for the 501c3 and JCDC. As such, we take on responsibilities to put all this in perspective from the standpoint of the cost and time and quality. Always a challenge in any project, particularly one of this size, and certainly the diversity that goes into it. So as part of that process, we work closely with HDR. Kiewit has been a partner through this, who has helped with the cost estimating, so we have real numbers. They're market-based, they're local. And we've worked together as a team between HDR and Kiewit and folks within Burlington for other projects, numerous projects, as a matter of fact. But with that team, we've produced a budget. We've met on a regular basis. We've evaluated, we've asked ourselves questions, we've addressed issues. We've recognized, and Bruce is the architect, but as a construction management graduate, I did take some architecture classes. It was pointed out one of the premises of architecture is form follows function. And in this case, the function is clearly a program that Chris has pointed out, has identified, and that's really what this project is all about. So as we walk through the budget, I'll spend a little bit of time on this, not too much, but site preparation, about $4 million in site work. That includes the site clearing, the grading, the excavations necessary. It includes, if you remember the slide that Bruce showed with the central courtyard, it includes that connecting walkway undercover between the MUD building and the Justice Center. So with that $4 million, there's paving, there's logistics that go with that, but predominantly the Justice Tower.
Don, can you speak up? It's real hard to hear you.
I told the man over here,
Yeah.
it's great to hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Not much.
Move this a little bit. I think this is on.
Yeah.
Too tall. Is that better? Oh, there we go. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak to the Justice Tower. Again, Bruce mentioned the square footage is on that, about 140,000 square feet. That's 8 stories. That composition, it really includes the MUD building also, that 40,000 square feet. That will be part of the Justice Center overall. It also includes the walkway that Bruce mentioned that goes from the tower directly to the courthouse, which allows that traffic way between the courts, the judges, the attorneys, and also all the logistics of the supporting staff to have direct connectivity. The youth center, total construction on that is about $27 million, but with the philanthropy provided by Sherwood Foundation, they have indicated that $5 million for consolidated site will go towards the youth center. So effectively, that produces a $22 million number for total construction costs of about $91 million. Other construction, there's components. Telecom will be certainly, and IT will certainly be significant in this project. About $1.5 million. Audiovisual, about $1 million allowance. These courtrooms are quite sophisticated in today's standards. Security allowance, there's some security checkpoints, that type of thing, and then some miscellaneous items for about $250 or about $3.2 million. Movable equipment, actually that's the FF&E, the furnishings, that will be mainly in the public areas. The intent of this budget is not to refurnish all the attorney's offices and all of the behind-the-scenes things, but certainly address the lobby, the courtroom areas, the family spaces, and provide, state-of-the-art and very contemporary furnishings in those locations. Project design and management, I always say HDR is the big player. There is some additional costs that will go into this through HDR for the site relocation. Schematic design is actually completed on the library site, so now there'll be some reevaluation, some reprogramming, some adjustments that will occur on the MED site. Independent design consultants, these are folks that will work as a direct pass-through cost through HDR. They're listed there, but all very important to the overall delivery and specialty knowledge that will be associated with the project. Project manager, that is Burlington Capital. Special services includes the geotech, a little bit different than the soils report because this would be in the field during construction for evaluation of steel, concrete, earthwork, some of the things that are required by special inspections. Wind study, curtain wall is the building envelope, the glass envelopes. Elevator consultant, food service, and then audio visual. Special services, this I was on special services. Again, listed there, again, all ingredients to the delivery of the overall design of the project. And then the owner contingency is about 5%, a little bit over 5%, which takes us to $114 million bond issue targeted for public monies. I think with that, I can answer some questions if there are some in the meeting, but Joel, maybe a couple of final comments from you would be appropriate also.
Good evening. I'm Joel Peterson. My role here, I'm legal counsel for the 501c3. What is the 501c3 and why are we using it is a question I hear a lot. It's a special purpose entity to deliver integrated project services to get the project done on time, on budget. That's the goal. So it's alternative construction delivery. Our county clerk is here, so the one other thing the lawyer is going to do is do that technicality that says this is an open meeting. We have a copy of the open meetings law available here in the middle of the room. So if you're counting commissioners and saying this is a public meeting, it absolutely is a public meeting. So we will get on with the questions. And you want to wrap up?
Yeah, can you put that? Okay. Yeah, first. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go to this and then open up for questions. Let me say, first of all.
Can't hear you.
Okay. First of all, we got 45 minutes. We gotta be out of here 7:30. But if there's questions that need to be answered, we will stay to answer those questions. You're asking questions. So we're gonna give you a minute to ask your question, or make your observation, or make your comment, and then we'll try to answer to the best of that. Like you mentioned, this is a public meeting, so we're going to ask you to line up at the mic so we can get your questions, but also, because this is a public meeting, I need you to say your name so the clerk can have that on record, okay? Now, close with this, because I'm just ending with this. Like I said, this right now, I mentioned to you we're at JDAI site, Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative site in Casey. Every quarter we do a report of people that are in the detention center. The latest report, which came out sometime last week, they GIS this with me to identify where kids are around the county that are in the detention center. To your right is East Douglas County, to your left is West. It's obvious where most of these kids are in the system. Another issue that we're trying to get at is disproportionate minority contact, or racial and ethnic disparities, referred to as DMC and RED. On the first slide I showed you, it mentioned some work that we're trying to do to try to get there, but I put this slide up that, he said that function follows form. The building is a part of a process that get to the program. So forget the building. It's about these kids and the programming and everything that comes to it. And for 10 years, we've been working to try to reform this system to put it into effect to make sure that we don't have kids in detention that don't need to be there, and that we get them the services to be better and more productive citizens. As you can see from some of the slides, I once, there's a politician here that I once heard that Nebraska is a late in and late out state, meaning we kind of catch up to things late to where everybody else is, and they kind of come out. As you can see, we're way behind from some of the other stuff that you've seen to some degree going around the country. So, you know, the board sees this as an opportunity for us really to bend the curve on the juvenile justice system, make some significant change to change the generation. So let's put that up and put it in perspective about where these young men and women are that we're dealing with and what we're trying to do in some respect. So with that, you want to line up at the mic again, remember to say your name. I don't want to police it, but I'm actually to keep your comment and your question to a minute so we can get as many as we can in the 45 minutes or 40 minutes that we have. And again, at the end, if anyone needs questions, I'll be here till the wheels fall off to answer any questions that you have. And so with that, we'll take your questions and then try to answer the best I know. Yeah, so I'll give you the cue when your time may be up.
Okay. My name is Tyler Wilson. I'm a resident of Douglas County. I have a couple questions. Statement. So you say that the building has nothing to do with programs, and this is only about the programs and it's about the kids.
No,
So,
build this part of it.
right. But you stress that the programs are what's needed to help reform juvenile justice. So programs aren't needed to reform juvenile justice?
The building is a part of the program, and what I had said is, it's been portrayed to make it seem like this is all about building the building. The building is part of the program, so it's about the building and the program.
Okay. So my question is, number one, how will the number of juveniles be reduced to accommodate the new facility? Because your average daily population in the current facility is 80 youth. You're going to build a facility with a capacity of 48. And with the issue of separation for PREA reasons and things like that, you're only going to be able to use about 3/4 of that 48 beds.
No, right now in the facility that we're in, the operating capacity is 96, and that is...
I said average population is 80.
No, I'm trying to answer your question, though. Right now, the facility that we're in is operational at 96, and some of those aspects are in effect because of PREA. As it was stated, this is designed because of PREA, for PREA in mind, so there won't be anything that's offline. Everything will be online. You stated the fact of 48 beds, and before we stated that we're going to build 48 beds up to 64. As of a few weeks ago, that has changed. We're going to build 64 beds. And at the closer time down to the point when that's ready, we'll look at it and we'll kind of decide if we need 64 or if we need 50 or where we're at to some degree. So we're going to start off with 64. Your other question about the program to some degree is that the point I noted to you is that programming is going to start in July. So we need to reduce programming down for kids that are there right now. So at least monthly, sometimes every 2 weeks, I am allowed to sit in a meeting with the presiding judge and probation, look at the count. The last time we got together, from that point there was 83, there were probably about 16 to 14 kids that would be out if the law took effect now. So we feel like with the investment of funding coming from Sherwood, the changes and the processes that probation are going through right now to get us up to speed, that we'll be able to hit that number comfortably and be able to have the program. Programming is not something that's done and taken off the shelf. The process they've done with programming is that we have people that are already in the process of fulfilling some of these programs, and what usually happens is those people that are there and that are willing to take more kids on, there's a detailed conversation that happens about them, about increasing capacity. A lot of the hindrance in the past has been the financial resources to get there, but now we have commitment for a stable funding to be able to keep those up and be able to serve those kids outside instead of inside.
Okay. Here's my last question. Has this project received approval from the Nebraska Jail Standards Board?
I have not seen anything yet.
No, it's been submitted, but we kind of interrupted that because
Can you use the microphone?
so we submitted it with the previous site, but we interrupted that because of the change in site, so that's the status. And
So has the new site been submitted to the Nebraska Jail Standards Board?
not yet.
Not yet. Are you aware that in the state of Nebraska, the Nebraska Jail Standards Board has to approve
Right.
any design related to a new facility before construction can be built?
Right. Yeah, so that's part of our typical design process, and we would do that at the point of probably completion of schematic design. And I want to recognize Wade Gehring, who's also part of the team, and David Lemke, who are critical people on the HDR team. But that's part of our normal process.
So we're attempting to secure funding for a project that hasn't even been approved by the state governing body.
But it's no different than any authority having jurisdiction where we go through the process. We design to their standards. If there's issues, then we make those adjustments. But we understand, the requirements that they have. So we're fairly confident. You don't know until they approve, but it's no different than any other project, whether it's going through the zoning review board, city permitting, any of those agencies that need to have approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Laura McCormick, Seattle, Washington. My question is, you used 2 examples for other facilities. Were those facilities, the expenditure of funds approved by the voters in Seattle, and what was the other location that you used?
Well, we used Hennepin, Ramsey, and King County. which
Was
is
it on the
Seattle.
ballot?
King County, I believe, was on the ballot.
Has the construction of the facility in Seattle been contentious?
It has, and
How so?
well, all I know is what I read in the papers. We did have 3 representatives that came and spent a couple days with us that are in leadership
Please
positions.
second that element to that. My name is Joe Ritchell, I'm also with Burlington, I did my research to that. And there was some contention, and surprisingly, the contention in Seattle was they didn't want to build it because the thought process out there was, why are we building jails for kids? And so the thought process out there was, they did not want a juvenile detention facility at all. And I talked to one of the city councilmen that represents the city of Seattle. He's a former Omaha attorney, so we had an extensive discussion about this whole process. And one of the things that he told me, he was opposed to it, but he was opposed to it for the reason of he did not believe that we should be in the business of putting kids in detention and that kids should have alternate placement other than detention. So that was the...
Could I pause you there? Do you believe that we should build jails for kids?
That's a question.
It's a yes or no
No,
answer.
no.
Yeah.
It is not a yes or no answer because clearly there is a segment of kids in our population that need to be detained, but the vast majority of our kids do not need to be detained, and that's part of the thought process, as Chris was talking about, going through this whole reduction process, is that there's a segment that the knee-jerk reaction is to put them in detention because we have nowhere else to put them. And I think we've lost focus what the true purpose of detention is at the juvenile level. It's supposed to be a rehab process and not a punitive, or we got to put you in detention because we have nowhere else to put you. So the jurisdictions that have done it the best and some of the models that we have followed are those jurisdictions that have put some of the programming in place that Chris has talked about and has been presented here so that you do not have to put kids in detention. The kids that should be in detention are the ones that are at risk to public safety. And the majority of kids in our system and in most systems don't fall into that category. They're kids that need resources and help to deal with the problems that they're dealing with, and to put them in detention, to use a term, is you're essentially creating criminals, because what happens to them when they're in that system is they actually do learn criminal behavior. The trauma that they go to causes them further problems, and they eventually end up graduating into adult jails, where there's a further expense on us as taxpayers. So to answer this question, yes, there's a small segment that need detention, but I would agree that the majority of these kids do not need to be in detention, and Chris can answer that as well.
Oh, it's okay, if you don't mind. So I just want to clarify. The voters in Seattle, a very liberal place, they actually put this initiative, their initiative, on the ballot. Is that right? And despite the contentiousness, the Seattle taxpayers approved the construction via a vote. Is that right?
Yeah, so, and there, I think last July there was a protest, as George said, their preference was 0 beds.
I understand.
But it's not.
What about
not
in
realistic.
Minnesota? Did the
Well,
voters there approve that? Was that a vote?
I don't know, that was decades ago, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
And what about our current detention center? Was that a ballot initiative? The existing structure that is where it is right now today, was that put to the people? Was that a vote?
That was before me, but my thought was, it was because it was solely the county.
Oh, okay. And last thing, I'm so glad you brought up the issue of, the detention center
But
and the
Laura,
holding
hold on.
situation.
No,
I know-
no, I'm actually get to it because
Oh,
you're there, so get to your
I
point.
know, but so much time.
But I'm
was-
asking to be
I
fair.
paused it when you weren't speaking.
Okay,
I
good.
paused it.
Thank you. I
So,
appreciate that.
wrap your question.
Well, I'm familiar with young people in Douglas County because of my observation in the courts that are dumped in the detention center because there's no facilities to take them in Nebraska. And what I don't understand is how any of this is going to change that. That's my last comment.
Okay. So, to your question about you don't understand how any of them changed, it let me, based on the last makeup of the population sector that I looked at that was in there. I announced that, we've got a lead commitment from the Sherwood Foundation to work with a facility that will handle a degree of mental illness that is there. As of the last time that we got together, at that time, there were about 10 to 12 individuals that were there that would fit that mold. Like I said, the programming piece starts in January. There's this perception that January comes, people will get just put out on the street without any care. That's why the programming piece is being wrapped up now, so people will be able to go there. So kids will be able to go there. So in some respects, we went to the programming piece to be able to handle those kids that are there with the services that they needed. And if everything goes according to plan and things move forward with the facility, there's 3 years where we have to be ready to do this, and I feel comfortable that with the capacity resource to be able to get there, we'll be able to handle that.
Larry?
Yes, sir.
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha. District 6132. I guess I'm kind of used to
Hey
that.
Larry, can you talk a little louder?
I guess I'm kind of used to that. I find it very curious that, I don't know what time the World Health started posting stories this morning, but it had to be before 5 a.m. in the morning. 3 or 4 stories on topics that were talked about at the city county building today. But what I'd really like to know is, when I first got interested in this topic was 2014. And we were going down to listen to some county board business, and we found out that there was a Sherwood Foundation and a Terra Luna that signed a contract with the Douglas County Board. I believe your name was on it. I don't know for sure who else, because I gave that copy to somebody, hoping it would come up, but it hasn't. I'd like to know what happened to Terra Luna and the topic of OIS, OPS, Omaha Youth Success, kind of disappeared into the woodwork somewhere, but now it surfaces again because we hear Sherwood is donating money. Well, didn't they get some money from the county back in 2014? Now they're giving it back to us? Is this kind of a shell game in a way? We're not really transparent, are we?
So
Yet people like me are accounted, more or less assaulted in the newspaper this morning and then again at the meeting today. This is not being derogatory towards any particular one person. This is being transparent as far as I'm concerned. We just want some answers, and we want to know if this is tied to, I don't have my state constitution, but in there it says, or there's a bill down there currently, that bond issues will not be done without a public vote. What's the true story here? Are we trying to get this done right now before that law gets passed or amended, so that it will affect this justice center?
Okay,
Good
so
question.
let me unwind that. Your point about Sherwood for the last 6 years has been partnering with us on criminal justice activities in juvenile, some on adult. They've been a great partner with us, and we went at that dually. In today's atmosphere, where the county has limited revenue and whether there's limited revenue all over the country, the model where a lot of these things are getting done is they get done in public-private partnership. We're going to look at Cook County. The MacArthur Foundation and some other people have partnered with Cook County to do juvenile justice reform. If you want to look at New York, Bloomberg Foundation has partnered with the city of New York and some others to do reform. Sherwood has been a partner with us in helping fund that with the county to get us here. And quite frankly, without some of their support, we wouldn't be at the point that we are to be able to do this. The county never gave money to Sherwood. Sherwood helped us with a project finance-wise. You mixed OIS and the county together. That's separate from this project. That's another piece. You mixed OPS in. That was a whole nother piece a year back that has nothing to do with the county. So in that respect, there's no issue of transparency in that respect because the OPS business with them happened at the board meeting and that got addressed there. The situation that happened in respects with OIS and Sherwood got addressed there. That was a evaluation study that they paid for. The county didn't give them money. They financed that through a grant. So in that respect, the situation of a bond down in Lincoln, there's a senator that put a bill in. For whatever reasons, I'll leave it at that. I have my opinion on it. But the fact is that the mechanism that we're using to finance is a mechanism that only Lincoln and Omaha has. The city of Lincoln and Lancaster has used this mechanism to build buildings before, and we just use the same one that's there by law. And we're using it basically to some degree that there is an urgency. I mean, to me, one day longer that a kid has to stay there is an urgency for me. And so I think this is top priority that we need to be kind of get at this with. Anybody else?
John Schmidt, a Douglas County resident, and now that the project has moved one block to the east of where you had originally wanted to build it, it's to my understanding, the Douglas County Board has not stopped their process of eminent domain on the parent historic building that was the center of this entire controversy. What is the current position? Is that eminent domain process going to be stopped?
I'm going to get real legal here because that's in the courts. The person the county has the issue with is in the audience. And so the board is well aware of that, and when time comes, we'll announce what our plans are.
Well, it would be unfathomable to even imagine that after you've moved the project a block to the east, that you're going to still attempt to destroy this historic building.
Well, let me say this, the county board's will is to not to take anybody's property we don't have to. And we'll make every attempt not to do that. That's about the safest answer I can give you.
In my opinion, this is what should have happened. The youth detention center should stay right where it is and be renovated and courtrooms added to that. And if the judges did not, would you please shut that off?
Sir, let me ask you this. Let me ask everybody this. I'm going to ask you to be respectful.
Okay.
Okay. And because I explained it to you from the start, so you know, if you get that, I want you to know.
But on the site where it's going now, a lot of money could have been saved by letting MUD stay right there where they're at. The eastern 2/3 of the north half of that block could have been the Justice Center or the courtroom annex. And I think everybody here can agree that more courtroom space is desperately needed. I don't think that's an issue. So the MUD building would stay right where it's at, with MUD still there. The eastern 2/3 of the north half of that block could have been an 8 or 10-story addition to the courthouse, and the south half of that block could have been a parking garage shared by both MUD and the courts. And like I said, the detention center should have stayed right where it's at, in a pastoral setting of trees and grass, plenty of room for that facility, build the courtrooms out there so the kids didn't have to be transported downtown. I don't think a downtown environment of concrete, even if you have a patch of grass on the roof, is a good substitute for what we already have where it's at now.
Okay.
And if it was an issue of trying to get the judges to move over there and go to the detention center, then pick them up in a limo and take them over there if they have problems.
Okay, let me try to bite that off in a couple of ways. One, moving the courtrooms over there, moving a courtroom. You don't have room to move the courtrooms. That goes against the general principle of what the board as a whole wanted to do in regards to co-location. All of this talk about renovating that facility cuts at the core of co-location. Co-location is one of the key foundation pieces that's around, and if the basis of any proposal coming doesn't have co-location, it doesn't meet the general rule of what we're trying to do, to have everything in one facility, to try to make it more family-friendly and things of that sort. The courtroom, a courtroom there for juveniles there to some degree, is not the same as the courtroom. I've heard examples say where you got a courtroom at the adult facility. Adults and juveniles are different. The whole thing of making it there is about the services, the families, and the kids. You can't move all of them there. And I'll say this to some degree. I'm not an architect, but I've sat in enough of these to let these understand costs. There's this perception out here that it would be less to remodel that facility. I don't think so. I absolutely don't think so. And any architect working their way in gold, anybody dealing with this can look at it and say that. That's my personal perception. Now, to the thing about the kids, there's this perception like those children that are there at that facility right now go out and about and play. No, those kids don't leave that facility. And they don't because we don't want to have them there that long. What we're building now, what the concept is of juvenile justice, is risk mitigation. If someone did something serious, they're being held there and they're going to be transferred to East Omaha. What we're building is a facility that's trauma-informed, that's going to mitigate the risk and try to stabilize that for the family. And quite frankly, we're trying to build it for the least amount of time that kid needs to be there. So, to your point, we're making adequate pieces there for those kids to get the service they need at the minimum point, but the main point is to get them in the community with their families and get their service there. Thank you for your question.
Joanna Lindberg, Douglas County resident. I've been involved, monitoring when the old facility was built. I used to work in the very first one. And I'm excited to hear about it not being a jail environment, and that'll make an enormous difference. But how do you change a philosophy that's been in a jail-like setting? I know, how it feels to be in that facility. So, will there be quite a bit of training and philosophical planning about how do we bring the best out of the kids? How do we be restorative? And I'm assuming that's kind of down the line, but if we make a change in a great building, are we going to make a change in a very restorative way? And then, like the education rooms at the current facility, the classrooms aren't big enough. Will the kids go to a classroom, or will they still, in their smaller pods, go to have a teacher come to them?
You, as the facility speaks out, as the service speaks out.
Excellent question, and on the education piece, there is education space and maybe multi-purpose for other programs as well, but that's a common space between the modules, so they share that. But same intent to continue education as long as they're there.
And I want
provide
to
those services.
thank the county commissioners for all the time you put into this plan to help kids do better. I appreciate it.
Joy, you asked about the service piece. I mean, Bruce pointed out the floors, and it is the intent to have continual training there for all the stakeholders in the system.
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. I've been following this for about a year, getting close to a year, and fact of the matter is, the only reason why we're here is because you guys didn't get to get your first plan. If you got your first plan, we wouldn't be here. None of us would have gotten to know you guys, but you're here. I'm not convinced that you guys are qualified to develop this plan. Your vote indicates that you believe that the nonprofit is qualified. I don't believe so. But having said that, is the nonprofit willing to look at other plans?
Let me.
I'm not asking you, sir. You're not the nonprofit. I'm asking the nonprofit, please.
Louis, I'm gonna tell you this to some degree. I just ask people to respect the process.
This is my opinion,
No,
sir.
I'm not gonna give you an opinion, but I'm just telling you.
Is the
respect
nonprofit willing to look at other alternatives? Alternative
The
design? Because I have one right here, and I want to give to the
The
nonprofit.
process, we've looked at, as I said at the beginning, alternatives were looked at the beginning to get here. That's how
Okay,
we
so
got
you're
here.
not going to look at alternatives. So I'll move on.
Your plan, let me say to some degree, your plan doesn't have
Are
co-location.
you taking my time?
No, I'm
Go ahead.
pausing it when you're speaking.
So, I'm confident that you're going to look at how to reduce kids, but I don't know how that's going to look. How you're going to reduce the number of kids in juvenile detention. Okay, one thing that could happen is probation look at how they're putting kids in juvenile detention. And are they looking at the aspect that if minority kids are going to be put in detention while white kids are going to be put into programs when you reduce the number of beds? Is that an unintended consequence that you have looked at because of institutional racism? That black kids, minority kids are going to be sent to detention and white kids are going to be sent to the programs?
You got two parts. First question is what probation is going to do, program piece. What probation has done, and all of us around the table have done with the JDOT process to get us from the 220 down to the 80 is the same process we're using now. It's an increased need for capacity, so they've been looking at that, and we got the resources to increase the capacity. That's the process that we went through. That's the process that, quite frankly, all of them go through around the state to try to reduce that. Your second point was, again?
That the unintended consequences.
Oh,
where
DMC.
Yeah,
DMC, okay. When we first started in 12 years ago, and we were at the 2010 number, reduced the numbers down. At one point, they were about 50 to 40, and then they back where they are now. DMC was the glaring issue that came out of that. So, the state was addressing that. The state released their DMC responsibilities. The county applied for it to the federal government to take that up. So the county has jumped in with both feet to try to reduce the disparities at the points of decision. So right now, we've got a coordinator where we're working through that. We've got a project in Georgetown trying to work through those disparities at DMC. That is a process not only for us, but people all around the country. So the county has put an emphasis on trying to reduce disproportionate amount of contact.
When was the last time that was reduced?
And we have
DMC. When was the DMC reduced?
The numbers fluctuate. They're down, they're up. Right now, it's about 50% of kids that are in there that are kids of color. That's down somewhere at one point of about 65. So those numbers are coming down. They're not coming down quick enough.
Thank you.
So I would like to clarify. On the 501c3, our role is to support the county and the Public Building Commission. We're not making decisions about the project. The short answer to the question, are we considering alternatives? The alternatives we're considering, of course. We've moved the site already, so we can flex. We can do those course corrections. But it's only in support of what the county and the Public Building Commission, and through the Public Building Commission, what the city is doing. So we are on the implementation side and inherit the decisions from the governing bodies. That's what we do. We don't independently exercise judgment.
Well, if the commissioners were we look at it, we could
So-
submit an alternative.
Louis, can you
As a point of
finish?
clarification, I think it's important for the citizens to understand that.
And a point of clarification,
No,
if
Louis.
the commissioners were dealing with it, I'd be able to
Louis.
submit an
No.
alternative to that.
Louis, I'm actually getting.
You know, I want to support Lewis. Lewis is trying to have a dialogue. This question-answer structure is part of hierarchy of oppressive power, and Chris, I'm sorry, you're at the peak of it right now. A dialogue is a dialogue. It's a give and take. And it's a little bit democratic. And democracy is a little messy. I don't know if you knew that. Democracy is a little messy. The people who marched, they weren't marching for a timeline of 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. They were marching, and it was messy. That's how we began to move forward, this messiness. This control from the top, I have real reservations about. And I have reservations about whether this particular assemblage of people are the right people to make the kind of choices. I mentioned in the previous meeting, the United States, and I want to remind people, white supremacist nation from the very beginning. Chris, did you know that this August we celebrate, in August we celebrate the 400th anniversary of the first enslaved people who came to the United States at Jamestown? This August. And ironically enough, Omaha follows up and says, 100 years ago, September, is when a white racist mob lynched Willie Brown. So what I see here is basically white people talking things. I didn't realize there was a brother here. I was sitting in the back, but it sounds to me like he doesn't want this thing to be incarcerating people at all. And that, I like to think 114 million people have developed some programs for work and education and training and nurturing of the young people in North Omaha. It's the poorest neighborhood in the United States, for goodness sake. Congratulations, Omaha. Nice work over the last 100 years. We now have the poorest neighborhood. So, in fact, what we should build into this building that you're putting downtown is an apology room. So when the kids come in, the judges and the lawyers and the staff can all apologize that they're going through this.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm over my time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, can you identify yourself for the record, please?
I'm not going to. I'll go to jail. No, I won't. My name is Doug Patterson. I am in Chris's District 3. And I'm glad I'm turning a little to the left.
And, okay, so just let me say, so to be quick, you know, I don't take, you know, lightly the fact of the country that I'm in. And you want to walk a day in my shoes? You can stay afterwards and we can talk about it, but right now, you really ain't got to stand and talk to me about oppression. So in that respect, if you want to talk about it, we can talk.
He's a white man, he knows about oppression.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else have a question?
Wow. Talk about professionalism.
Hey, let me say this. I respect everybody in here to some degree. And what I mean by that is that just because I'm a public official, and please listen to what I'm saying, I take this seriously. All of my colleagues take the duty seriously, and I have not once disrespected anybody in my role. But the fact is, because I'm a public official, please don't think that you can talk to me any kind of way you want to. And I say that to that piece because, yeah, I'm a black man in this country. And I'm not going to let somebody check me on me and where I grew up.
And I'm an openly gay man, so let's
That's
talk oppression.
Jacob Haas, Douglas County resident. So towards the beginning of our discussion, you referenced a study that supported this co-location. I was just curious as to the reference for it. Like, what was the study? Who funded the study? Where can I find it online if it's publicly visible?
I think the study is online at the county site. The study that's referred to is the study that was done by a lady named Karen Chen about 2 years ago. That study talked about co-location, it talked about a lot of things. One of the things it talked about was trying to have a a campus setting. That was impossible here in some respect. The map I showed you, the only place you get all of that is out west. So the Chan report talked about co-location, it talked about the influence of services, and it talked about having a facility that's trauma-informed care. So the heart of a lot of stuff that is going on is in the Chan report. If that, I will give you my card. If that report is not on the website, I will get you a copy of it as well.
There's also a document, Transforming Juvenile Justice Systems, that was published by the Center for Juvenile Justice Reform last May 2018. That's also available online, Transforming Juvenile Justice Systems.
And if it's not online, you can get the Chin report on the 11th floor of the Civic Center.
If you come see me afterwards, I'll give you it.
You know about the question.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, my name is Jordan Kermode, local resident, obviously a colored kid. Most of the time you can't figure out what I am, but dad hails from slave country in Atlanta, mom hails from Nebraska, and I just want to openly say I'm here for the kids. I'm a youth developer, mentor, educator, and I was the kid that was this close from needing this detention center. And the primary facet was the village around me was poisonous. The people around me were poisonous. My siblings were a bad example. My dad was absentee. My mother was too busy chasing her next killer. And I was saved by a coach, by an educator, and by somebody just saying, Jordan, I'll listen to you, and no matter your circumstances, you can be better. And so what I wanted to ask about this was, and I hope I can maybe be a part of this, is what programs are in place that are going to stem from the building in order to engage the poisonous villages essentially and cure the issues at hand rather than patch the kids when they're coming through. So like essentially how are we going to divert and engage from this building instead of just bring people in? Because we can throw a lot of money, we can throw a lot of numbers, we can throw a lot of research, but I'm sure that you can share this with me. Somebody that said, Chris, you're good enough. That made a difference. So I just wanted to know what we're going to do to engage North Omaha, the South Omaha, to make those people feel wanted and welcome instead of saying, you got to come down here and talk to us.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. And also, U.S. Air Force veteran, multiple college graduate, traveled the world, worked with thousands of kids, built a bunch of football clubs, worked with professional EPL programs in London, and just my whole basis ever since my dad died from cancer was how do I provide opportunity for those that are come after me? That's my purpose in life, and that's all I want to do. So how can we do that?
Okay. Good question. Thank you for your service. The basis for that is basically, all kids are at risk. If you're a juvenile, you're at risk. Any kid from any background can make a wrong decision, they can find themselves in that respect. Our process in it right now to get where you want to get totally upstream, we're trying to convene a group together, and we've been convening a group together for the last couple of years in OYS trying to get upstream on that. So there's a constant effort to try to work on that in some respect. The money that is being made available to us for this project, if everything goes, doesn't have a restriction on it in regards to where it can be used. So there will be engaged discussions with people at Systems Points to see if we can derail the flow that comes in. As part of the discussion right now, we have had a conversation with Superintendent OPS just to get an idea of what they're doing, what plans they have in place to make ourselves available to them if they need help in some of that respect, so some of that conversation is happening. In regards to how you can get involved, there are some opportunities that we have in the county on some committees. I'll give you my card if you're interested there, and we'll try to facilitate a way for you to get involved.
Thank you, sir. And just wanted to, little body of knowledge, praying for all of us because we're all in this battle together. So thank you for having us tonight. And the opportunity that I've been doing a lot of research designs for this few years, international, close range, grassroots, We have a bunch of grocery stores, we have a bunch of JCPenney's closed down, we have a bunch of big box closed in the heart of these places that are dying. So I have designs, we can craft those out of it and create something holistic, like Unit for Contemporary Arts is something beautiful that's been created out there. The Croc Center in South Omaha, something beautiful that's been created out there. I just want to make sure that when we all go home from here, that if you all want to know something we can do, go down the block, there's some kid probably playing outside with mom making a ruckus and noise, that's a mess. Find them a t-shirt that isn't tattered and torn, and listen to what they need to say, because they really just need a hug. Handshakes, hugs, high fives, and hellos, and we can make a big difference. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello. It's a tough act to follow. My name is Christine Henningsen. I'm a resident here in Douglas County. I'm also an attorney, and I've represented youth in juvenile court for over 10 years. Just want to make one comment before I got to my question. There's a question posed about why our numbers are so high, or why kids who are low risk are going in to our youth center. And I think part of the issue is that detention is so readily available. It's a quick option that doesn't take a lot of time and forethought to go into. And the way our current system works, police is delivering that youth to probation intake. They're anxious to get back to work, get back on the street, right? So there's these internal pressures to find a quick solution where to put this youth. I think efforts like the CSI Welcoming Center will help us utilize programs that are already there that may take longer to find, and will move our practice away from detaining first, figuring out later, to figuring out what the youth needs up front. My question is, one of the things I really like is the co-location of the site, and also the deliberate use of lighting and materials that to be determined for. I've been in the youth center a number of times, both in the mods and the visiting quarters. There's not really a window for the youth to see, and all the models I've seen of the alternate plan have shown like outdoor views. And so my question is like, how feasible would it be to really renovate that cinder block to make it trauma-informed? Because what I don't want is to send a message to our kids where we have a brand new shiny courtroom and new offices for attorneys, while we continue to shackle our youth and put them in a cinder block with no windows on 42nd and Center. So I don't know if you have any realistically, could it be done without demolishing the whole thing, or how it could be done?
I appreciate your comments and question, and I think just in terms of the tectonics or how the building is built with the concrete block walls, it is difficult to renovate. Everything's possible. Everything's possible. The cost to renovate it, I think, would be significant. That's a challenge that we considered, and we didn't think that kind of the juice is worth the squeeze there. It just is difficult, and really, at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. We're looking also at trying to make, even though there's secure modules, to make them flexible, so if the use changes in the future, we're able to react to that a little bit more easily than some of the facilities. And it's typical design. The current youth center, they're all over the country, and they came more out of the correction side for design, and now we're looking more at human and dignity aspects for the kids there.
Ivan spoke, thank you for your comments. I was there yesterday because they had a briefing, and we were all invited. The parking situation there is most difficult. You may know that better than me, and I've been there many times over the years. But the renovation of that facility would probably cost, I'm almost certain of this, more than what it would cost to build a new facility and have it all together. And that's one fact. I mean, the room we were in yesterday for the meeting, the noise was so loud from the heating and air conditioning system, right there where we had the parents of the youth that were there. And that was just one of their first meetings with parents, and that's why I wanted to be there and listen to what the parents had to say. So we can talk later if ever you want.
One other point is that it's occupied 24 hours a day, and it's a secure facility. Both of those create complexities when you're trying to renovate, keep it operational and secure. So the contractors have to have some clearance, and that adds another layer of complexities. Thank you.
So, let's let me be clear, you two and us, so we'll answer that, and then, again, if anybody has anything, we got a certain time we need to be, that we need to room, out here, and I'm sure everybody else will be here to answer questions, so after those two formally, we'll be here to answer questions to the.
Thank you, and I think I have more of a statement, but a short question. So I guess I just wanted to say I've been really appreciative tonight that everyone in the room, as they've made their comments, just clearly cares about the future of Omaha and specifically the future of our children who are going to be affected by this building. And I just really want to honor that and thank everyone and everybody organizing this meeting for that, because I think that's the most important thing, and we need to keep our laser focus on what's going to be good for kids. I'm sorry I didn't say my name. I'm Juliet Summers. I'm a resident of Douglas County, former juvenile public defender, and I work at the state level doing child advocacy work. So as we're thinking through all of these decisions, putting that question of, is this going to be a good thing for the kids of Omaha who are involved in these often traumatic court processes and systems, is crucial, and I really have that sense in this room that that's what everyone's here to do. I do want to put on the record that it's my opinion that our current system does not satisfactorily answer those questions. So our court space being too small, our detention facility being outdated and not trauma informed, that we just don't, we're not there right now, and we can do better for our kids. So my question specific to the question about DMC, or disproportionate minority contact, is something that we're highly concerned about. And I noticed on your first slide, I didn't, maybe you addressed this and I just didn't put it, but that you had referenced the Burns Institute offering some kind of service or TA, and I was just curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. As mentioned, there's a group of high-level people gathering to try to identify blocks in the system. And the Burns Institute has, I don't know if we finalized it yet, but we're in the point of finalizing bringing them in to help us in regards to address the DMC from the system point level, and also to help orient our new DMC coordinators and things that are going on. So we're trying to solidify that. This is the second return for the Burns Institute. They were here in 2010, and they did a study for us. They got us aligned to do some stuff there. So we're looking forward to having them come. Okay, everybody, Carlos, last question. We'll be here if you want to talk.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, my name is Ricardo Ariza, and I'm from Douglas County. And I want to first start off by saying that Creator has given us our children, and they're gifts to us. They're sacred. And how we proceed into the future, we need to keep that in mind. Again, they're sacred. Your choice of Hennepin County, I trained there 30 years ago at the sex offender adolescent unit. It was very progressive. But my question is, why are we looking at a facility that's 30 years old as our premier facility for the future of Omaha? And maybe I'm misunderstanding why that's so.
Can I comment?
Oh, please.
So it's not the facility that we're looking at, but more the programs and what they've done in the community to work together to reduce the number of kids in the program, and training for the staff in the youth center, and bringing all that together. We know the facility is not much different than the current facility. That the the thing that's working there is the co-location. And they've made some attempts to improve the finishes in the facility at Ramsey. And so we're not looking at that for cues for our space, other than the co-location aspect and the success they've had around that. They continue to drive the diversity disparity issue as they make progress on the number of kids. So they're doing a lot of things right in the community. That's really what we were looking at, the co-location, not the architect, not the architect.
A certain component of that also was the fact that in getting to reality, one thing we talk about co-location, but to actually see somebody who's doing it makes it real. And we took some of, that captain or sergeant or major, whatever it is now. He's been promoted so many times. We took some of his officers down there, and the light bulb went off for them when they saw how kids were transported from the detention center to the courthouse. Because when we just talked about it, I don't think anyone conceptualized that, but I was with them. So when they saw how that worked, they're like, okay, we get it. It makes sense. So that was important, just to, it gives you a real-life example of how it works. So that was beneficial for us and the group and the team.
And also the urban development around those facilities that have been there for years, the new Children's Museum, the new stadium, that they're quiet facilities, secure. So that was the other reason.
Okay. 2 terms, diversity and trauma-informed care. I think that the digging down into the deepness of what those truly mean, we're not there yet. A lot of people are throwing it around like candy, and they don't understand. And then my last comment is the Native American youth in this community, nowhere on the radar. Nowhere on the radar. We talk about our African American youth, which is appropriate. We talk about our Latino youth, which is appropriate. But the statistics that are kept on Native American youth that are locked up, I don't see it. I don't see the data. And for whatever reason, we need to pay attention to that. Please.
No, your last point is well noted. Note that the ethnicities are self-identified, so on your point, we'll try to make a better deal of getting those separated out. And to your point about trauma-informed care, we've been getting trained on that around the providers in the system for at least the last 7 to 8 years. And there's a big community move to get there. You're right, that's there, but what we're trying to get at with the facility and everything in it is to make that a mainstay, a cornerstone.
Chris, I'm teaching at the Omaha Nation High School.
Yes, sir.
And the whole concept of historical trauma is very different than in this community.
I know, and
okay?
if you want to give me an invite to come out there and feel it, I'll feel it.
You'll get an invite. Thank you, Chris.
All
right, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that I hope that we all can leave with. I was that trauma kid. I watched my mom get her face kicked in. I knew more police officers than I knew people that had a graduate degree or had a degree, let alone. And then I was working with a behavioral response project around here with kids. And they wanted me to give candy and a Chrome or an iPad in order to get them to calm down and then send them back. What I did though, the reason why I'm not with the project is because I would listen to the kid. I would see that they're hiding in their room because something their dad did to their mom years ago. Or I was listening to a kid and found out that he's so violent because he's protecting his little sister because somebody did something to his little sister. But we want to ignore that, and we don't want to think about that. So there's not a magical way for us to fix this. But there is a way for us to fix this, and that's by not treating the kids as kids, but respecting their voice as people that have lost their innocence, that have lost their ability in order to think that things are colorful and candy's good and SpongeBob's cool. I really just hope that from here we can all maybe take it upon ourselves to be that champion for maybe that one kid, and just, be that ear without the judgment and let them speak their piece, because a lot of the time they're kicking and screaming because either home is so bad that nobody's listening or won't listen for them. So I just challenge all of you to take that initiative and maybe be that champion and teach these kids, as what my motto is, defined by character, not by circumstance. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Before I give it to Commissioner Borgeson, let me first, if anybody was offended by my statement, let me apologize. But let me say with that, don't cry crocodile tears for me. I've gotten called worse in front of 40,000 people in a basketball arena, so. But just know, my intent is not to cut anybody off. We had a timepiece. We'll be here to answer any and all questions that you have. It's not like it's hard to find any of us. If there's any question you have, please do that. Just know that your voice as a citizen is respected. But just because we're public officials, don't mean you can disrespect us. And there's a certain line that I'm going to keep on that person. So with that, I want to thank you for coming out and appreciate your time here tonight, Commissioner Wilson.
On behalf of the 501c3, again, thank you all for coming and sharing your questions and concerns with us, and have a good rest of the evening.